The cry for help. The night skies of Kerith burned red. Cities that once glowed with lights of peace now burned like dying candles. Alien families ran through broken streets, clutching children, clutching what little they could carry. The ground shook with every strike from orbit, and each blast sent walls tumbling into dust. The invaders had come fast, without warning, without mercy. Kerith had been a peaceful colony, far from the borders. The people had believed that war would never touch them. They had no great army, no heavy defenses, no fleet to protect their skies. Only the promise of the Galactic Council, that all members were under protection. But when the warships of the enemy arrived, the Council's fleets never came. The Council chambers were silent, their diplomats giving excuses. The truth was simple, though no one spoke it. Kerith was not important enough to save. Inside the burning capital, Chancellor Vare stood before the shattered transmitter tower. His robes were torn, his face covered in ash. Beside him, engineers struggled to power up the last working array. The Chancellor's voice trembled, but he forced strength into it. "Send the call," he said. "Send it to every corner of the stars, to anyone who will hear." The engineers obeyed. The signal, a raw SOS, leapt into the dark. Across fractured space it carried one desperate message: "Help us, we are dying." But even as it left their system, Vare knew what most believed: no one would come. The invaders were ruthless. They called themselves the Dravari, conquerors of the rim worlds. They laughed as they slaughtered, proud of their cruelty. From the skies their fleet rained fire, and on the ground their soldiers hunted with cold precision. The Dravari were feared across the galaxy, and yet no one dared to oppose them. In the shelters below, survivors whispered in despair. Some wept that no one would answer. Others clung to an old story, one rarely spoken anymore. "They say long ago there were Deathworlders," one elder whispered. "Humans, they were called." The younger ones frowned. Many had never even heard the word. "Humans?" "My grandfather spoke of them," another said. "They were warriors from a harsh world, stronger than all, but they vanished generations ago." "Vanished or chose to hide," the elder said, his voice low. "But if they still live, perhaps they will hear." Above, the Chancellor stood at the balcony of the Council chamber, watching the flames rise higher. The city he loved was dying. Every breath of smoke, every scream carried to his ears. For a moment, despair threatened to crush him. But then he thought of the message. A single signal flying into the void. Maybe, just maybe, someone would hear. Out in the deep void of space beyond the mapped trade lanes, the SOS traveled. It echoed past dead stars, through broken satellites, past forgotten stations. Most receivers ignored it. Automated filters cast it aside. But then, one system caught it. A listening post orbiting a red dwarf, long thought abandoned. Its silent machinery flickered awake. Old metal stirred, power hummed through dead wires. The signal was recorded, and in that forgotten station, a voice spoke in response. Message received. The aliens of Kerith did not know it yet, but their cry had reached the one place the Council feared most, the Deathworlders on Kerith. The Chancellor gathered what few leaders were left. They sat in a broken chamber lit only by firelight. "We cannot hold for long," Vare said, his voice heavy. "Our fleets are ash, our people are dying, but we sent the call. And no one will come," one general said bitterly. "The Council has already turned away." Silence filled the room, heavy with despair. Then another whispered, "Not no one. There are old stories. Humans." The word hung in the smoke. Some laughed in disbelief, some frowned with unease. "Legends," one minister spat. "Children's tales, no more." But Vare did not laugh. He remembered the look in the elders' eyes, the quiet hope. "Legends are all we have left," he said. "If even a shadow of those warriors still live, let them hear us." The sky roared again as another Dravari barrage struck. The city shuddered. Buildings collapsed into rubble. Screams filled the air, and yet in the middle of despair, a spark of hope flickered. The SOS had gone out. Across the stars someone had heard. And in the darkness of space, deep engines stirred awake. Ships long hidden began to rise. The Deathworlders had listened. and their answer would not be mercy, but fire. The forgotten name. The signal drifted through the cold silence of space. Most of the galaxy ignored it. Machines marked it as distress and buried it in endless noise. The Council dismissed it, afraid to anger the Dravari. But one place did not ignore it. A relay hidden in the black of space came alive. Its screens glowed after centuries of silence. Old codes, written by hands long forgotten, awakened again, deep inside a system connected to a place no one had spoken of in ages, the Deathworlders archive. The message reached Earth. But Earth was no longer the quiet blue marble the galaxy imagined. It was a fortress, silent to outsiders, hidden from maps. Its skies carried fleets that no alien eye had seen in centuries, and when the message played, the Admiralty listened in silence. Admiral Kalen, scarred from 100 battles, stood before the Council of Captains. The chamber was deep under. The old city, holograms of burning Kareth flickered before them. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Kalen's voice broke the silence. They called for help and no one came, he said, his tone cold. The captains shifted in their seats. They sent the cry to the wrong place, one captain muttered, or the right one. The younger officers stirred uneasily. Many of them had never faced the galaxy outside. To them, stories of aliens were only lessons in history. But the older soldiers remembered. They remembered betrayal. They remembered the day the Council branded humans too dangerous. The day the galaxy pushed them into exile. And yet here was the call, a broken voice from Kareth begging for salvation. They don't want us, one captain said, but they still beg. Kalen's eyes narrowed. Want us or not, their world burns, he said, and the Dravari are laughing. The chamber grew darker as the feed showed another bombardment, millions of lives erased in seconds. A child screamed in the background, then silence. Every officer clenched their fists. It was no longer a debate. It was an insult, a challenge. The Deathworlders were not known for forgiveness far away on Kareth. Survivors hid in tunnels beneath the capital. The SOS had been sent, but days passed with no sign. Hope was thin. Children asked their mothers when help would come. The mothers had no answer, only tears. In the dark, the elders whispered again of the old name. Humans, one said softly. Deathworlders. A boy asked, "What are they?" The elder leaned close, voice trembling with both fear and awe. They were the ones who survived on a world where nothing forgave weakness. Every beast hunted them, every storm tried to kill them. Even their own planet was their enemy. And yet they thrived. The boy's eyes widened. They sound like monsters. The elder shook his head. No, they sound like justice. Above them, the Dravari soldiers grew restless. They had crushed the city and still no one came. To them it was proof. The galaxy was theirs to take. They laughed at the ruins. Their commanders boasted of victory. But even the Dravari whispered one word in private. Humans. A curse from old wars, a warning to children. If you meet a Deathworlder, run. Back on Earth, preparations began. Massive carriers that had slumbered for centuries roared awake. Engines shook as hangars opened. Railguns were loaded. Marines sharpened blades and checked armor. The Deathworlders did not march for politics, they marched for survival. And now, for vengeance, Admiral Kalen stood at the command bridge of the dreadnought Iron Resolve. He looked at the glowing red image of Kareth's burning sky. One thought echoed in his mind. The galaxy had forgotten humans, but now they would remember. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Destination, Kareth. And Admiral, one officer asked, voice low, what message do we send back to the Council? Kalen's lips curled in a grim smile. Send nothing, he said. Let our guns speak. On Kareth, Chancellor Vare knelt in the rubble of his chamber. He looked at the night sky glowing red with fire. And for the first time, he saw a different light, a streak across the heavens, bright and fast. At first he thought it was another bombardment, but then more streaks followed, dozens, then hundreds. ships breaking into the atmosphere, their trails like burning meteors. His heart stopped. "They came," he whispered, voice broken. "By the stars, they came." The soldiers of the Dravari laughed as the streaks lit the sky. They thought it was debris, another collapse of the dying city. But when the first warship emerged from the clouds, blocking the moon with its size, the laughter ended. The forgotten name had returned, the Deathworlders, and their answer would not be gentle. The shadows move. The sky above Kareth trembled. For hours it had burned with the fire of invasion, but now new fire streaked across the heavens. The Dravari soldiers raised their weapons, their cruel laughter fading as shadows began to cover the city. Massive shapes broke through the smoke, their silhouettes dark against the burning clouds. They were not Dravari ships. They were not council ships. They were something far older, far more dangerous. At first the survivors could not believe what they saw. From the tunnels, from the ruins, eyes lifted to the sky. The ships descended like mountains of steel, their engines roaring like storms. Symbols long forgotten glowed faintly on their armored hulls. An old language. One word repeated. Earth. Chancellor Vare's breath caught. The legend had stepped from myth into reality. Deathworlders, he whispered, as the ground shook with the sound of landing thrusters. Above the world, in orbit, the human fleet spread out. Dreadnoughts the size of cities drifted into formation. Carriers opened their armored bays, revealing endless rows of fighters. The humans had moved in silence for generations, unseen by alien eyes. Now they revealed themselves in force. Every gun, every ship moved with one purpose. No words were broadcast, no threats were made, only the quiet, steady rhythm of preparation for war. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Admiral Kalen stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His scarred face glowed in the light of battle displays. He watched the Dravari fleet scramble above the colony, their ships turning hurriedly. "They thought this was easy prey," he said coldly. "Now they will learn what it means to face Deathworlders." His officers stood ready. Some were young, their eyes wide with tension. Others were veterans who remembered past wars. Not one doubted the outcome. Humans did not fight to intimidate. They fought to end. The Dravari commander aboard his flagship barked orders. "Form up. Crush them before they descend." He shouted, but his voice betrayed fear. His ancestors had told stories of humans, stories of battles where entire armadas vanished under human guns. He had laughed at those stories, until now, from the shadows of Earth's dreadnoughts, swarms of fighters screamed into motion. They cut through the void with precision. Their weapons lit the darkness like lightning. The first Dravari cruiser exploded, torn in half before it even fired. Panic rippled through the enemy fleet. This was not a battle, it was slaughter. On the ground, Dravari soldiers pushed into the ruins, searching for survivors, but suddenly, the sky lit up again. Columns of fire slammed down as human dropships pierced the clouds. Doors opened, and armored figures leapt into the chaos. Human marines, armored in steel-black suits, their visors glowing with cold light. They hit the ground hard, rifles already firing. The Dravari had faced many enemies, but nothing like this. One marine grabbed a Dravari soldier by the throat and hurled him into a wall as if he weighed nothing. Another fired a rail pulse round that tore through 3 enemies in a row. The survivors of Kareth watched in awe from their shelters. To them, the humans were not just soldiers. They were monsters of steel, or angels of vengeance. No one could decide which. In the command bunker, Chancellor Vare and his generals listened as the battle above thundered. A transmission crackled. Through the ruined console, the voice was human, deep, steady, carrying no emotion. "Kareth, we have received your signal," the voice said. "Stand by. The Deathworlders have returned." The bunker went silent. Every heart beat faster. They were no longer alone. But even as victory began to bloom, shadows remained. Not every Dravari ship fell easily. Their commander pulled his fleet into tight formations, preparing for a desperate counterattack. On the ground, their warriors fought with savage fury, refusing to surrender. The streets became a storm of fire and steel. For every Dravari that fell, more came from the burning wrecks. The humans answered. With brutal efficiency, they moved like predators, their discipline unshaken. Still, the battle was far from finished in the tunnels. The elder who had spoken of humans whispered again. "Do you see, child?" The galaxy forgot them, but the shadows never forget. The boy's eyes shone with awe as the thunder of human guns shook the earth. "They came," he whispered. "The Deathworlders really came." Above, Admiral Kalen narrowed his eyes. As new data appeared on the screen, a second wave of Dravari ships was entering the system. Larger than the first, the Admiral's voice cut through the silence. "Then let us show them what fire truly means," he said. "All batteries. Ready." The shadows of Earth's fleet moved again, this time not in silence, but with the roar of vengeance fire across the stars. The skies of Kareth had never seen such fire. What had begun as a desperate invasion turned into a storm of steel. The Dravari fleet, proud and ruthless, was now trapped in the jaws of something far greater. The Deathworlders' warships moved like hunters, cutting the night apart. Admiral Kalen stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching the screens. Light up with red markers, each marker was an enemy ship. Each one began to vanish one after another, swallowed by human weapons. "Bring the dreadnought railguns online," Kalen ordered. The crew moved with sharp precision. Massive coils glowed across the ship's spine, energy building like the breath of a volcano. Target locked. An officer called, "Fire!" Kalen said. The shot ripped through space like a thunderbolt. A Dravari battleship shattered instantly, torn apart from bow to stern. The shockwave lit the battlefield, casting long shadows over the ruined colony. The survivors in the shelters lifted their heads, their tears replaced by awe. The humans had not come to bargain. They had come to end. In the streets below, human marines fought like storm winds. Every movement was brutal, efficient, unstoppable. The Dravari were larger, stronger in muscle, but the humans fought with something more. Endurance, precision, rage honed into discipline. They pushed through the ruins, clearing block by block. For the first time, the Dravari screamed in fear. A squad of survivors huddled behind broken walls as a firefight raged. A mother shielded her child, whispering, "Stay quiet. Stay small." Then the wall shook. A towering Dravari beast crashed forward, weapon raised. The child cried out. But before the strike could fall, a shadow dropped from above. A human marine landed between them, armor glowing under the flames. He raised his weapon and fired point blank. The Dravari fell lifeless. The marine turned his visor toward the terrified family. "Stay behind us," he said simply, his voice calm like iron. The mother began to cry, not from fear but from relief. Above the planet, the Dravari commander raged, "Hold the line!" "Push them back," he shouted. But his fleet was breaking. Each human carrier released swarms of fighters, darting like arrows into the enemy ranks. Each dreadnought unleashed railgun storms that tore holes through entire formations. Dravari ships exploded like fireworks across the dark. Still they fought, desperate not to show weakness. But the Deathworlders had no mercy. On the Iron Resolve, an officer turned to Kalen. "Admiral, their reinforcements are collapsing," she reported. Kalen's eyes stayed fixed on the battlefield. "Not collapsing," he said coldly. "They are burning." The council far away finally received reports of the battle. Their chambers erupted in panic. "Humans," one whispered, his voice trembling. "The Deathworlders woke again. They cannot be allowed to fight. Do you know what this means?" Another hissed, but none of their words mattered. The galaxy was already watching. Every signal, every transmission, carried the image of human warships tearing through the invincible Dravari. The myth had become real again, on Kareth's ground. Chancellor Vare stood in the bunker as the rumble of war echoed above. He felt the Earth itself tremble with each orbital strike. His generals watched the displays in silence, their faces pale, but Vare's eyes shone with something new. Hope. "They came," he whispered. "The Deathworlders came." The Dravari commander on the ground realized the truth too late. What had been an easy conquest had turned into a grave. He shouted for retreat, but his words were drowned by thunder. From the horizon, a human dropship descended like a falling star. It smashed into the battlefield, its doors opening with the hiss of steel. Out poured soldiers with glowing visors, their boots crushing dust and ash. They moved forward, not with shouts, but with silence. Every step was death. The Dravari line broke. Panic spread faster than fire. Some fled. Others dropped their weapons and begged. The humans gave no answer. They fought until nothing remained. In the orbit above, the last Dravari flagship tried to escape. Its engines burned hot, racing. For the edge of the system, on the Iron Resolve, Kalen watched it run. "Admiral, orders?" his officer asked. Kalen's voice was like a blade. "End it." The dreadnought's railguns fired once more. The flagship vanished in a single blast, scattering into 1,000 fragments. The battle was over. For a moment, silence spread across the colony. The skies cleared, only the human fleet remained. The survivors stepped out from the rubble, staring upward. Some fell to their knees. Some raised their arms. None could speak. They had been saved. But they had also seen the fire of legends, and in that fire, they realized something. The galaxy had mocked humans, forgotten them, erased their name from history. But now, the Deathworlders had returned, and their fire would never be forgotten again. The Reckoning. The fires of Kareth still burned, but now the flames came not from destruction, but from the wreckage of the Dravari. Their ships lay in pieces across the orbit, drifting like broken bones. On the ground, their soldiers were scattered, hunted down by Deathworlder Marines who moved like shadows through the ruins. For the first time in living memory, the Dravari were afraid. They had crushed hundreds of colonies. They had burned countless cities, but never had they been forced to kneel. Now their commanders hid in fear. Their soldiers broke ranks and begged for mercy, and the Deathworlders gave them only silence. Admiral Kalen stood on the command bridge of the Iron Resolve. The battlefield was quiet, save for the hum of engines and the crackle of burning wrecks. Reports scrolled across the screens. Enemy fleet destroyed. Ground resistance collapsing. Survivors secured. His officers looked to him, waiting for orders. "Do we pursue the fleeing ships, Admiral?" one asked. Kalen's eyes narrowed as he studied the map. "No," he said slowly. "Let them carry the story." His words fell like iron. The officers nodded, understanding. It was not enough to destroy the Dravari. The galaxy needed to see what happened when Deathworlders answered a call. On the surface, Chancellor Vare walked among the ruins. Around him, survivors wept as human medics treated the wounded. Children stared at the armored Marines with wide eyes, unable to decide if they were saviors or monsters. One young soldier removed his helmet and offered water to a crying boy. The child flinched at first, but then slowly took it. The Marine's eyes were hard, but his voice was gentle. "You're safe now," he said. For the first time in days, the boy smiled. Not all was peace. The Dravari survivors were being gathered. In chains, their weapons stripped. Some cursed, some spat, others trembled in silence. One defiant commander shouted, "You think you've won? You think this is the end? The galaxy will rise against you. The Council will never allow this." A human Marine turned to him, visor glowing cold. The Marine spoke only one word, calm and final. "Good." The Dravari's laughter broke into fear. For he understood. The Deathworlders did not fear the Council. They feared nothing at all. Far away in the chambers of the Galactic Council, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted, their voices shaking with panic. "Humans! They're alive," one cried. "They broke isolation. They destroyed an entire fleet." Another roared, "They will destabilize everything." But a few spoke more quietly, their voices uneasy. Or perhaps, they have returned for balance. The council chamber split with fear and anger, yet all of them knew one truth. The galaxy could no longer pretend humans were gone. On Kareth, survivors gathered in the great square, now a ruin of ash and broken stone. They looked to the sky where human ships hovered like dark guardians. Vare stood before them, his voice loud, though his heart trembled. "We were abandoned," he said. "We were left to die. But someone heard us." His eyes lifted upward. The Deathworlders came. A hush fell over the crowd. Every survivor felt the weight of his words. No longer were humans only a story told in shadows. They were real, and they had answered with fire. Admiral Kalen walked the silent halls of his dreadnought later that night. He paused at the great observation deck, looking down at Kareth's wounded world. His thoughts were sharp, heavy. This was only the beginning. The Dravari would not forget. The Council would not forgive, but none of that mattered. When humanity rose, they did not rise for permission. They rose because someone cried for help. A young officer approached him, nervous but determined. "Admiral," she asked, "what will we do now? Return to Earth? Or press forward?" Kalen's reflection stared back from the glass, scarred and unyielding. "We do what Deathworlders have always done," he said, his voice low. "We endure. We fight. And we remind the galaxy why they once feared our name. The Dravari prisoners were marched through the streets. Survivors of Kareth threw stones, spat, shouted curses, but the humans did not allow slaughter. Their discipline was cold and firm. The message was clear. This was not chaos. This was judgment, one Dravari whispered to another in chains. "They are not like us. They do not kill in rage." The other shivered. "They kill in silence. That is worse." Above, the human fleet prepared for departure. Their engines hummed, their weapons cooled, yet their presence lingered like a storm that refused to pass. Every eye in the galaxy turned toward them. Every whisper carried the same words: "The Deathworlders have returned." For Kareth, it was salvation. For the Dravari, it was terror. For the Council, it was a reckoning. And for humanity, it was only the beginning. The choice of humanity. The fires on Kareth slowly faded. The screams of war had grown quiet, replaced now with the crackle of ruins and the soft voices of survivors. The Deathworlder fleet hung above the skies like silent guardians, their hulls gleaming under starlight. Every eye on the planet looked upward. For the people of Kareth, salvation had arrived, but questions remained. In the ruined council chamber, Chancellor Vare stood before Admiral Kalen, the human admiral. Was tall, scarred, his uniform dark as steel. His eyes were calm, yet carried the weight of centuries. "Why?" Vare asked, his voice shaking. "Why did you come when no one else would?" Kalen's reply was steady, almost cold. "You asked," he said simply, and no one else answered. The survivors looked at the humans with both awe and fear. Children followed Marines through the rubble, watching their glowing visors with wide eyes. Mothers bowed their heads in gratitude, but fathers whispered in worry, for even in salvation, they felt the weight of human presence. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were something more, something dangerous. They were the Deathworlders. In the orbit above, the human council of captains gathered in holographic session. The chamber glowed with images of burning cities, broken fleets, and the captured Dravari. Some captains pressed for withdrawal. "We answered the call," one said. "Our duty is done. Let us return to Earth." Others argued for a new path. "The galaxy fears us," one captain growled. "Let that fear become order. Let us remind them who rules the stars." Voices clashed, but all fell silent when Admiral Kalen spoke. "We did not rise for conquest," he said. "We rose because someone cried for help. That is all." His words echoed across the chamber. Yet in their silence unease remained. The galaxy would not ignore them now. The Dravari would seek revenge. The Council would plot. Humanity had a choice: to hide again in the shadows or to walk once more into the light. On the ground, whispers spread among the survivors. Some begged the humans to stay, to guard them forever. Others feared that such protection would bring only greater wars. One elder said, "When you call Deathworlders, they bring fire, but fire does not choose what it burns." The crowd grew silent at his words. Was salvation worth the danger that followed? The Dravari commander, chained and bloodied, laughed bitterly as he was dragged through the ruins. You think you have won, he spat at Chancellor Vare. You think they are your saviors? Fools, you have only unleashed them again, and now, none of us will be safe. Vare turned his head away, but his heart trembled. The words carried poison, yet also truth. Had Kareth's cry for help awakened something that should have stayed asleep? Back on the Iron Resolve, Kaelin stood at the wide observation deck. Kareth's wounded world spun slowly beneath. A young officer approached, her voice soft. Admiral, the people beg for our protection. What answer shall I give them? Kaelin's gaze never left the stars. Tell them we are not their rulers, he said. Tell them we came because they cried for help. Nothing more. But, sir, she hesitated. The council will not forgive this. They will come for us. Kaelin's lips curved into something between a smile and a scar. Then let them come, he whispered. The galaxy forgot what we are. We will remind them. Far away, the council argued in fury. Humans must be contained. One voice thundered. They are unstable, unpredictable, dangerous. Others whispered in fear. Or perhaps they are necessary. If the Dravari can be broken, who else can do it but them? The chamber shook with division, but all agreed on one truth. The age of silence was over. The Deathworlders had chosen to rise. On Kareth's surface, Chancellor Vare walked among the survivors one last time. He looked at the children who played with scraps of metal given by human soldiers. He looked at the widows and the broken, and though his people lived, he felt the weight of something larger pressing on his soul. The galaxy had changed, and it began here, with one desperate cry for help, and one fleet that answered with fire. Above, the human fleet prepared to depart. Engines roared, shadows stretched across the land. The people of Kareth fell to their knees, praying, begging, watching. Some cried for the humans to stay, others only prayed they would never return. But all of them knew the truth. The Deathworlders had given them life, and in doing so, had given the galaxy a warning. Admiral Kaelin gave his final order. Signal the fleet. Set course for home. The stars shifted as the dreadnoughts turned. The humans left in silence. But their silence was louder than any war cry. The galaxy now faced a choice: to fear them or to follow them. Fire becomes warning. The galaxy had gone silent. For centuries, the Deathworlders were only a myth, a whisper told in secret, a story to frighten children. But now every world, every outpost, every council chamber spoke their name again. Humans, across. Trade routes, merchants spoke in hushed voices. They burned the Dravari fleet, one said. They saved Kareth when no one else dared, another whispered. Fear mixed with awe. And with each retelling, the legend grew stronger. On Kareth, the survivors rebuilt under broken skies. The streets still smelled of ash, but hope had returned. Children carved human symbols into the walls. Families lit small fires and prayed not to gods, but to the fleet that had come from the dark. Yet, even as gratitude filled their hearts, unease remained, for they had seen what Deathworlders brought, not just salvation, but judgment. Chancellor Vare stood on a balcony overlooking the ruined square. Below him, people gathered to honor the fallen. Above, the night sky shimmered with stars. He thought of the humans who had come and gone in silence. He wondered if they would return again. His heart feared the answer as much as it longed for it. Far away in the shadowed halls of the Galactic Council, chaos ruled. Delegates shouted, their voices sharp with terror. The humans will not stop here, one cried. They will burn us all if we do not act. Others shook their heads. They answered a call for help. They did what we should have done. Fools, another shouted. You think they will stop at Kareth? This is the beginning of a new war. In the middle of the noise, an old ambassador whispered words that silenced the chamber. The Deathworlders do not conquer. They warn. And the wise will listen. Back on Earth, the fleet returned in silence. The great dreadnoughts slid into hidden docks, their scars still glowing from battle. Marines marched back into training halls, sharpening blades, loading rifles. The people of Earth asked no questions. They had lived too long under silence, but they knew. The galaxy had looked into the fire again. Admiral Kalen walked through the steel corridors of the Iron Resolve. His officers saluted, but his eyes were distant. He stood before the viewing deck, watching Earth's oceans glow under the sun. A world so beautiful, so fragile. A world that bred the most dangerous warriors the galaxy had ever seen. He whispered to himself, "They will come for us again, and we will be ready." In the ruins of Kareth, the elder who once spoke of humans sat by a fire with children around him. "Tell us the story again," the children begged. The elder smiled faintly. "Long ago, the galaxy forgot the Deathworlders," he began, his voice soft. "They thought them gone, erased, weak. But then a cry for help was sent into the stars, and the Deathworlders answered with fire." The children's eyes glowed. "Will they come again?" one asked. The elder looked at the sky. "Yes," he said, "but not for mercy. They will come as a warning." For the Dravari, the defeat at Kareth was more than loss. It was humiliation. Their fleet scattered, their commanders broken. The survivors whispered in fear. "We fought monsters," they said. "We fought Deathworlders, and we bled." Their leaders swore revenge, but even in their rage, fear lingered in their eyes. The galaxy had changed, and even the Dravari knew it. The Council tried to bury the truth. They tried to silence the reports, but the truth spread faster than lies. Every miner, every trader, every soldier in the galaxy heard the same story. Do not call the Deathworlders unless you are ready for fire. Admiral Kalen gathered his captains one last time. They stood in silence as he spoke. "The galaxy now remembers us," he said, his voice steady. "They will fear us. They will hate us. Some will beg for us. Others will plot against us. But we will not be silent again." The captains bowed their heads, for they knew what his words meant. Humanity had made its choice. They would not hide. They would not wait. They would be the warning fire across the stars. And so the story spread. Of a colony abandoned by all. Of a cry